Hello, welcome to Strip Down Sunday. I am Chris, and we are Soul Evolution Collaborative. And this is Strip Down Sunday, where we unchurch your Sunday experience. Welcome. We are thrilled to have you with us and to offer some inspiration, some spiritual upliftment, and hopefully a new take on life in a uniquely Soul Evolution Collaborative kind of way. We have stripped down Sunday mornings to offer you a streamlined experience that fits your needs. We have this strong desire to bring an updated message of inspiration to the world at a time when we all seem to need it the most. Soul Evolution Collaborative is dedicated to personal transformation and communal evolution. Two quick logistics to get out of the way before we really jump in here. One, everything you could want to know is now everything could want to know about our community is on this website, soulevolutioncollaborative.org. I just put the link into the comments. Anything you want to know about us is there, so feel free to open that up in another tab and poke around while we're here. Life-changing information is available to you. And two, it is communities with missions like ours that bring change to the world. We are actively creating a new earth and ways of life that benefit everyone. If you are in any way able to help continue this mission, we gratefully welcome your support. Donations can be made at soulevolutioncollaborative.org or through the link in the chat. All right, let's jump in. So today, the angry cucumber. So if you are, not new to spiritual circles or, personal growth, transformation kind of ideas, you're probably familiar with the symbolism of the butterfly that, it represents the transformation that goes from the caterpillar into the chrysalis as it breaks down and then emerges transformed into this glorious creature. The dragonfly is another similar one that lives in that same way. It's like 2 years that it lives underwater before it then emerges and does the same kind of chrysalis process before it emerges as the dragonfly. I want to introduce a new one to this whole concept, which is the pickle. That's what I'm talking about today. We see people with the tattoos that have, the butterflies and the dragonflies. I want to start seeing tattoos of like jars of pickles, because the pickle is pretty amazing. And we're going to see how that applies to what we're talking about this week for, the emotions. And this week we're talking about anger, looking anger in the eye, using anger as an emotion, as a tool for our spiritual growth. So the pickle. Here's this, delicate, perishable cucumber that, has a limited lifespan. And it's kind of like us, that we are here, we're impressionable, kind of delicate we can be easily influenced, and in life all of a sudden things happen that either make us angry or other things make other people angry that gets directed at us. We have to deal with anger. So that's kind of how I want to take the idea of the cucumber, and it takes in this vinegar. That vinegar is harsh, it starts to break it down, and kind of like the anger, if we let it just pile on us and we aren't aware of what it's doing to us, it can break us down and kind of weaken us up, make us feel less than, can make us bitter over time if we're not dealing with it. So that's where the cucumber, the process begins. But when we take that vinegar that's breaking it down, we add salt to it. Salt is a great preservative, and so I want to apply the idea of preserving that pickle to make it last for longer times to ourselves, to our own situation. When these things come up in our life, the things that either stir up anger or make us deal with somebody else's anger, that salt is kind of going to be like mindful practice, mindfulness, which, mindfulness, that's a term that when it's new to people, it may be kind of vague and not super clear to people, like what actually mindfulness is. We don't need to complicate it. Mindfulness really just means being aware, just observing with, intention, being fully present into what it is that you are observing. So when we take these moments of, the emotion of anger, like rising up within us, and when it happens, just observing it. That's all that mindfulness observation means, is just observing it. And, there's lots that come with it. You ask questions like, what is this telling me? Where am I feeling this anger in my body? What does it feel like? What is it that happened? Like, what is the real story here that made me angry? Sometimes it's crystal clear and it is exactly what you thought it was. but it helps to just think about it to ask that, because a lot of times also it's not crystal clear. And what you think you're actually angry at, when you stop and you just observe, you realize that what's causing that anger is something different. So this is like that braining, that preservation of the salt on the pickle, that of the cucumber that's turning it into the pickle. This mindfulness allows us to just kind of sit in that harsh vinegar that was, delivered to us, and using it as a tool for transformation. So again, like asking these questions of, what is this telling me? What does it mean? And here's a really powerful one: is, like, what would be the best path to take out of this, from this anger, like moving forward, what is the best thing for me to do? And the more that you just sit, I want to introduce just this idea of just sitting in your emotion and asking. We're all part of, infinite mind. We all have that voice in the back of our heads that, gives us proddings at different times. I want to encourage us, really, I'm reminding myself here to lean into that far more frequently. So when you get triggered and you're in that place of the anger arising, when you can sit back, one, just analyze, like, what happened, for this to occur? How did it occur? What does it mean? Is it actually what I think it is? And when we are in our personal growth space, which I'm guessing, like, if you're listening to this now and you haven't turned it off already, there's a part of you that is aware of this process of life. I call it, or Ernest Holmes called it, and I call it as well, this constant upward spiral. That is the natural tendency for life, is to constantly be expanding. So in that idea, when we sit in our anger and allow ourselves to observe it without putting, judgment on it in that moment, during the mindfulness moment, we're not there to judge, label, condemn others, shame or guilt ourselves, none of that. We're just there to observe it and just ask the questions. And then this is where, a powerful tool is just asking ourselves, like, what would be the best possible outcome out of this? How would my ideal self, so, like, if you have an image of you being the best image of yourself that you would like to be, the highest inspiration that other people, maybe, even, like, future generations, your children, or, others that want to look back at you and see, like, that best version of you. If you just tap your imagination into that a little bit, like, what would that version of myself do in this situation? And just learning to just ask that question, it gets a ball rolling. It gets your subconscious mind connecting to that part of you that's there, that exists within you, that exists within all of us, that we are all part of that one infinite mind. The great teacher Jesus the Christ, he, pointed us to this all the time, that, that the kingdom of heaven is within, and this is accessible, which isn't shared enough out there in the world. So asking that question, like, what would that ideal self version of myself do moving forward? And when you ask that question and that ball starts rolling, it's amazing that ideas come to you. It's, it's subtle. It's not always going to be like glaring, signs that just point you directly there. The ideas are going to come, and the idea is that the more you practice this, the more you learn how to really kind of interpret, decipher those images that come to you. So it's a powerful practice. So again, taking in that vinegar, that hatred, and transforming it into a gift for us, because ultimately, like, that's what, our emotions are. It's a feedback system. Like, our body knows what's going on in our world, in our, communications, our social engagements. Our body knows before our mind knows, which is, it's an instantaneous thing. So these emotions that arise are, one, they're, ways of interpreting the world around us, and they're also tools for, like, pointing us and moving us forward. So again, back to that upward spiral thing that we're all on, that we're, all a part of. If we just kind of go through life and everything is pretty just kind of even keel, hopefully we are still moving along that upward spiral in a way of bigger expansion, bigger expression, um, moving towards those ideals that we would say, if you believe in a God or creator, or even like the Christ, or if you believe in some set of like kind of like moral guidance, moral guidelines. Hopefully, there's something in you that resonates with this, that you are constantly trying to express and be more of that. So when we, oh, now I completely lost my train of thought. Let me have that. So if I, now I know where I was now. So as if you're not like intentionally moving along, or you're living life at that even keel kind of way, you're still kind of progressing. You're taking in all your experiences and learning little snippets of like how you might be moving in that direction of how you better express those higher parts of yourself. But the moments that happen that cause like anger, or other challenging moments, these are times where we kind of have these exponential jumps in our ability of how we show up, of how we grow and expand. If we look back over our lives and see those moments that caused us the biggest challenge, those times when we maybe thought like we're not going to get through it, it was like so challenging. If we look back in hindsight and see those moments, like those are our moments of the greatest expansion and growth in our lives. So if we can learn how to recognize those things, those moments, for the gifts that they are. And I know that's hard to say, and I don't mean at all to belittle anybody's, tragic experiences, any of that. I want you to lean into this as deep as you want or as shallow as you want. Just looking back at moments of challenge, and those were the times when we had the biggest um, amounts of growth. I know personally in my life, I wouldn't change a single thing because it's all put me exactly right here. And I know that those moments that were challenging for me, that I didn't know or maybe even didn't want to get through, if I look back at them, I see how they have contributed to bigger kind of leaps in that upward spiral of growth. So then recognizing those things, like right now, just listening to these words and then thinking about it and making an intention, so that when life throws you that vinegar here, whenever, this week, in a month, whenever, that something in you remembers and says, this in time will be one of those growth moments. So we learn to then alchemize. We shift that thing that comes into our life that is very uncomfortable, even painful, and we shift it into a moment to have one of those evolutionary jumps in our own personal transformation. We By doing that, and then also by being mindful and asking the questions like, how is my ideal self going to show up? What does my ideal self want to do here? We start to really shift the energy around it. We drop a lot of that resistance, and it becomes, as painful as it is and as it sounds, it becomes a gift. And we learn to experience and appreciate all aspects of our life, recognizing that everything that we experience is keeping us on that upward spiral. Now, back to the thing of, the idea of that vinegar that's getting thrown at us through the anger of others, or through our own, anger at things that are out of our control, or even things that are in our control. Um, if we don't set that intentionality of wanting to expand it, then it controls us. We are at the whim of it. And, I've seen people that really, as life goes on, and they're not processing it, they see everything that happens, those moments of anger coming at them, as like things that happen to them, and instead of things that happen for them. As that's where I was going with the idea of using them for tools. That changes it. Instead of it happening to me, it's happening for me. So we see the people that just constantly feel like it's they're always in bad luck situations, they're always mistreated, and they feel those things coming to them, and they don't have that intention to try to like ask the questions, learn and grow from these moments. And they sit there and stew in that vinegar and kind of just they get bitter as life goes on, and they shut down and they build walls around themselves because they don't want to feel that hurt and that pain. And I totally get it, and I'm not here to judge. Everybody's on their own path. I'm just reminding myself, and if this resonates with you, then that's great. So that's, the one risk is if we're not dealing with those things, it shuts down and closes us down. And now, one other risk of how we deal with this anger, if we want to use it as a tool to expand and grow and learn how to create the new world that we are shifting towards, um, we have to get out of our old way of thinking. Like the old way of thinking that has gotten us up to this point, it is it's so like it's very short-sighted. It's all about me. So I was recently talking to somebody, and we were talking about like our childhood. It was somebody that I don't know very well, and I got to learn a bit about this person's past. And to me, it was kind of sad to hear that this person expressed that they spent over a year and a half in juvenile detention when they were young, because they were expressing that because where they come from, if somebody says something to you or says something about you or challenges, like you can't let that go. That's you're going to be deemed weak or whatever. So where they came from in the streets, like you have to like fight back. And they did, and they spent over a year and a half for being in fights. And as they got older, they've also done adult time incarcerated over the same thing. And all because of what somebody has told them. Some 10-year-old told some 8-year-old that you have to go and pummel and beat that person up because of the way they disrespected you. That's so old way of thinking, and it's so it's painful for me to see somebody that would throw away big portions of their life in order to defend what their ego says you have to. What some other person who just really wants to see a fight tells you you have to do. So when we learn to transform our anger in those moments, especially like I'm never going to say just let somebody harm you. If somebody is physically attacking you, yes, absolutely, you have to fight back. And if somebody is emotionally attacking you, we have to defend ourselves and protect. But we have more faculties available to us when we are using more of our mind, when we're in that reactionary place. If we're just going to react to that anger, that vinegar coming at us, and we're reacting like in the moment without stopping and thinking about it, it's just anger on anger. And that's going to constantly, an eye for an eye leaves everybody blind. It's just going to constantly lead to more destruction, more pain, and more loss. So when that's the other thing too with anger is when you are in a state of anger, your thinking and critical thought like capacity is greatly diminished. It is very challenging to make a moment to stop that anger momentum to make a healthy choice. But right now, like when you're not in that state, if you continually set this intention to know that next time I get triggered in anger, I am going to catch myself. Just constantly telling yourself that sets something up in our subconscious mind through the universal subjective mind that will begin to send signals to you so that next time that you're in anger, you can pause for a second and ask what's the best way going forward, as opposed to being that knee jerk kind of reaction that gets us into a lot of trouble and just creates more animosity. Because regardless, anger on anger is always going to get more anger. That's inevitable. And that's so 20th century way of thinking. As we talk about creating this new earth and this new way of being, the shift in human collective consciousness, we have to 180 degrees change the way that we do almost everything. And so getting away from those knee jerk reactions, getting away from that idea that, you can't be disrespected, you have to bring actual harm to your own life in order to prove that your ego is, worthy and is too big to be brought down. But if you connect to that deeper part of yourself, like it doesn't matter what anybody says or does about yourself, and you're coming from that deeper place, then you can use your higher faculties. How am I going to respond to somebody, mentally attacking me or verbally attacking me? Whatever it is, if I just instantly react, and I'm using the example of like typing, if somebody's attacking me like on social media or something, and I just instantly respond and start typing, it's going to have not the best outcome. More than likely it's just going to be more of that anger on anger. So if I can stop and recognize what's going on, recognize that emotion in myself, and then asking myself, what's that highest version of myself, how would that respond? And then there's power in that. I want to bring up, two quick examples that I've seen of this, like in, the social media example, both Sarah Silverman and Patton Oswald. And this has been, a couple of years now, but both of them, were being attacked by trolls, like in Twitter or something. And what ended up happening is both those people, they paused, and instead of just responding with more anger at this person that's just obviously wanting to start a fight of some sort, went and looked at these other people's profiles. And when they did, they like scrolled through and like, oh my gosh, like this person has a lot of like really tough breaks that have just been coming like one after the other. So then they pointed it out and responded and said, hey man, this person, this is how they put it out in the world. This person was trolling me and I wanted to attack them. But instead I went and looked at their profile. They've had some really, tough things come into their lives. Let's send these people some love. And that's all they did. And then people reached out and said, hey, I'm sorry to hear about, the losses in your life or whatever. Those two trolls that, had this opposite of what you would expect response from people, opposite of the response that they were hoping for, because anger cries out for more anger. It feeds on it. Eckhart Tolle talks about it. It's the pain body. It feeds on more of that. And that's what it wants. And that's why it lashes out at other people. So when, Sarah Silverman and Patton Oswalt were able to like flip it and say, oh my gosh, this is a hurt person that's, trying to hurt more people. Let's send this person some love. That person wasn't looking for that, didn't want that response, but it had this amazing like transformation, this power of transformation. And that person ended up, in both cases responding. So like, I'm blown away that you said something kind to me when I was so awful to you. That is the kind of powerful shift that really does create huge ripples in the collective consciousness of humanity. So really, that's what I'm talking about here today, is let's take all the things that happen to us and just lean into them, feel them, ask the questions like, what is the best that can come out of this? How can I be my best? How can I use this to move toward being more of what I want to be? And as we do that, we really create this new shift in the world. So, I hope that this means something to you. Taking that vinegar and then adding that salt, that mindfulness to create, a preserved cucumber that lasts, much longer and is packed full of nutrients. And then, everybody loves a pickle. So I just really, really hope that, as I say this, and I know I sound very preaching, I don't mean to be preaching at anybody. I'm just putting this out there. I'm preaching to myself because this is stuff that I have to constantly remind myself. So I hope that it resonates with you and that you can, apply some of this to your own life. And I have to tell you, like, if you talk to my spouse, they would be, able to tell you that I don't always, respond in situations the way that I would like. I quite often react, or sometimes, it's me that's short on temper, and I might be, what's the word, like, using my words in a snippy way. So I've got a long ways to go. I'm not trying to put myself on any sort of a pedestal. I'm just trying to encourage myself to look for my next pedestal to try to aspire to be on. And just setting that intention really does plant that seed and raise things in your subconscious mind. And the next time that you find yourself in a situation where anger and your initial like reaction and natural tendency is just to feed right back in with more anger, the next time that you are there and that you actually catch yourself just thinking for a split second enough to like stop the words from coming out of your mouth and then pausing and then start asking like mentally, internally, how you can respond when you have that experience. I might have it 1 out of 100 times, but that one time is so powerful and so transformational that it makes it all worthwhile, and recognize and know that we are moving into this new way of being, and it's going to be a beautiful place, just one person at a time. We see it out in the world. So I hope that you become one of these people that gets to learn how to respond in the not knee-jerk way, because that's what the world has to have. Because like right now we see how the old ways are really, they've come to a head, and they don't serve anybody, but there is a way that can. It just takes time to ask that question. So I hope you all get to go and become your own pickle. Think about the jar of pickles tattoo, and have a wonderful week. Thanks, everybody.